listening to the 14th source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday, April 5th, 2024. And what a week it's been. Let's talk about the real achievement here, Andrew. We've now recorded 2 episodes in a row.
I know. But this one counts extra, right?
They said it couldn't be done. Yeah, this counts extra. And you know what? We should probably just get right to what we're talking about this week, because it's a big week.
We're talking about Taurus Comics and their new... No, I don't know.
Andrew and I are going to talk about Taurus Comics, and I hope Kyrun likes this episode, because we did not invite him on. Although we can talk about Taurus Comics, we are here to definitely talk about comics-adjacent media. But first, let's introduce our guest, and this is important, our on-the-ground Marvel correspondent, Kyrun Silva of Taurus Comics. Hi, Kyrun. How you doing?
Hi, Dan. Hi, Andrew. Hi, everybody. So we got to talk about that. Like, how did I become that title?
Because everybody that's not Andrew or I needs to have a title.
Okay. It's like the Daily Show, right? Everyone has to have like a totally nonsense title. Like, oh, it's our, whatever. On the ground DC Comics correspondent. On the ground Marvel Comics correspondent.
Yeah. So, and especially once Marvel starts getting it even more into like the cosmic stuff with the Fantastic Four stuff, when they start bringing Galactus and Silver Surfer and all that stuff, we are definitely going to you because that is your jam.
That is my jam. Anything Marvel space related, that's my jam. Yeah. So okay, I'll take it. Hi guys, how you doing today?
We're doing all right. We brought on Kyrun because a fairly substantial Marvel release happened recently, and that is of course the television show X-Men 97 on Disney Plus. As of this recording, there have only been 3 episodes released, with 4 by the time you hear this.
That should give you a suggestion of when this has been recorded.
Yes.
We sometimes allude to it and suggest that, in fact, it is not recorded the morning that you listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Believe it or not, this is not live for you, dear listeners.
Oh, I'm usually doing my stuff live. Why don't you guys do it live?
Because we need to edit our bullshit.
We need editors.
This is true.
Hey. But yeah, X-Men 97 has dropped a continuation of the original animated series, I think that originally dropped in 92, a mere month after Batman the Animated Series launched as well, which is a comparison that I think may come up again later. But it's interesting because this is the first official X-Men related cinematic release, quote unquote cinematic, that Marvel Studios has done since reacquiring Fox, that they've developed, I should say. And obviously it's not a movie. So far, it's not directly connected with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it is their opening salvo. And what it is, it's a kind of nostalgia porn in a lot of ways. Like, hey, what's the X-Men thing that people love? That cartoon? We're going to make an X-Men cartoon, but it's not only going to be an X-Men cartoon. We're literally picking up where the original animated series ended. I want to start by kind of going over the legacy of the original X-Men animated series. It is held in high regard. I made the joke about kind of nostalgia porn at this point, but like I think it is an important tentpole in American animation history.
Well, I think you really got to look at it as this was Marvel's probably biggest push into the animation game. I mean, they had already did Fantastic Four, which had lukewarm success, and also Iron Man had an animated series right before that. But like you said, Batman had just recently came out, and it was getting rave reviews. And this was Marvel saying, let's take our biggest franchise at the time, which was the X-Men, which had like 10 different titles running at the same time.
Yeah.
And let's turn all these stories that are related to X-Men into this hit of a series. And I don't think they realized how big the series was going to be until that first season was released. Because if you look back at it, there was not a lot of hoopla around it. It just sort of came out and everybody was like, okay, we have an X-Men cartoon series. This is the biggest comic book. And when I say it's the biggest comic, if I'm not mistaken at the time, X-Men during the 90s took up like the top 10 of every selling category that they had. Like it was
Right.
X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force. If it had an X on it, you knew it was going to sell.
If it had an X on it, 11-year-old Dan Bethel was buying it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was to a point where they were putting X-Men characters into every Marvel book they could, because they knew that book would all of a sudden have a jump in sale. And the idea that we're now getting this animated series, and they told us, hey, this is going to be pretty close to what you're seeing in the comics. We knew we had to get it.
Right. So like, just to kind of butt in there real quick, like one of the things that drew attention from comics fans is that the characters are wearing their costumes from the basically the Jim Lee design costumes, because a year before X-Men #1, sort of the relaunch of the title had dropped, as Jim Lee, Chris Claremont. And I think that first issue of that relaunch still holds the Guinness Book of World Records for most amount of comics sold for a single issue, which I think is like 8.1 million copies sold.
How many of them were you, Dan?
7.2.
Sidebar on that Jim Lee reference, there was a animator from the original Marvel X-Men series from the 90s that actually did an interview, and he said that when they were producing the series, Marvel executives came up to them and said, hey, we do not want you guys to use the X-Men's 90s uniforms, because a lot of those uniforms were designed by Jim Lee, and as Dan knows, Jim Lee had just left X-Men and all of Marvel to start up Image Comics. So Marvel said, we want to distance ourselves from Jim Lee as much as possible. But then the people behind the X-Men animated series says, why would we want to do that when this is what people are wanting? Don't make us go back to like the 70s, the 60s designs. Give us what they actually want. And, they held to their guns, and we got the best thing out there.
From what I understand, one of the biggest contributions in terms of American animation that this show brought, especially in the realm of like Saturday morning cartoons, because that's one of the big differences between it and Batman. Batman was a daily weekday cartoon. X-Men was a Saturday morning cartoon, part of Fox's lineup. But from what I understand, it was really like one of the first major Saturday morning cartoons to introduce serialized storytelling, where like events that happen in one episode carry on into the next, and references made to previous events are kind of common, following the story of these characters. And it's not just one and done kind of episodes where it might be couched in like a single story per episode, but changes persist from episode to episode, from season to season. And that, I think that was probably one of the biggest gambles they took, and it's stuck. And I think it is probably the biggest achievement of the show more than anything else, because not only did that predict where television in general would go, it was on the forefront of that in a medium that was not known, and for a while after that was not really known for that at all.
Yeah, and I think it actually carried over, because if you remember, a couple years out of X-Men was released, we had the Spider-Man series also from Fox and Marvel, and that carried along the same thing of having this episodic nature of storytelling, beautifully drawn artwork, and still taking stories from the comic books and making it, I don't want to say condensed, but they had to filter things out here and there because they were limited in their time and budget and things like that. But you're right. It was something different. It was something new. It was something that we hadn't seen in cartoon forms. I can't, like you said, I don't think there was anything even like that before.
Just so we can get this out of the way, see where we're all coming from. We'll start with, I actually want to start with Andrew. What is your history with the X-Men animated series?
So I watched the first episode last night.
Of the original 92 series?
Yeah.
Okay.
I may have seen the second episode as well. I forget. No, actually, because I think I tried to watch them when they were introduced to Disney Plus. Like a year ago? I forget when I saw it, and I think maybe I got 2 episodes in before I stopped. So that's my experience. I don't even think I knew it was on. To me, like the X-Men, I didn't know what the X-Men were until the movie came out. That's kind of like
it's that weird thing that Dan's obsessed with,
right? I knew you were into something with X's in it. I just assumed it was porn,
Yeah. Like triple X-Men. I think I saw that at one time.
Yeah, I saw that at the video store. So yeah, I never saw it, which is weird because it seems like everyone else did. Like part of me is like, what channel was I watching when this show came on?
You're just watching videotaped episodes of Star Trek, the animated series.
Actually, that's probably true.
Kyrun, what about you? It sounds like you were deep in it.
Oh, I was day one, I was watching it. I watched every episode when it premiered. Me and my best friend at the time, his name was Ransom. We would watch it either at his house or my house, and then we would, after the episode aired, go back and reenact everything we saw on that show. It got to the point where I was in love with the show so much. I bought the first series, or the first 3 episodes of the series on VHS. That's how long this was. Rewatched like the episode over and over again to the point where the first 2 episodes, I knew every line that every actor was going to say as it was coming up. Like I could, do the whole series. It was bad for me, honestly. But I mean, I was diehard X-Men fan, and the idea of seeing these heroes that I've been watching and reading for years now move, because at that time there was no thought of making a movie of X-Men. I mean, the idea of making anything that was from Marvel into a movie was just unheard of. Yeah, you had
Right.
DC was going to make Batman movies and Superman movies. We knew that, but the idea of Marvel spending some time and money making a movie was not anywhere in our eyesight. So the idea of this was the closest thing we were going to get to live action at the time, and it was great because it was so close to the source material that there were times where we would see a storyline and we'd be like, "Yep, I'm following this in the comic word for word." So it was awesome.
I guess I'm a little bit in between. I was a big fan of the comics. Like I've talked about many times. My first comic ever was off the shelf X-Men #1 because a friend of mine was a comic reader, and I read a lot of his X-Men comics and was like, well, they just rebooted. You should go buy it. I'm like, okay. And I was just absolutely obsessed, and especially with Jim Lee's art, and I was really excited for the show. And I didn't like it at all from day one. I think it was only because, and this is very shallow of me, I didn't like the way it looked. I thought the designs were too off model. They didn't like the art in the comics was so dynamic and just well rendered and just very, like I said, cinematic. And it just looked too, I don't want to, it's not cheap, not at all, but like it definitely, it was like everybody knew this was the biggest comic at the time. And it felt like Fox, who made the show, was not putting their best efforts in. And I think the other thing that pushed me the wrong way was kind of actually what you pointed out. Like after a while, a lot of the storylines they were adapting either felt they were word for word, beat for beat. I'm like, I've already read this, and it looked better when I read it, or like it felt like underdeveloped, or like the changes were weird, right? And so I fell off of it after season 1. I think I got a little bit into season 2, then I just bounced. So I like how we're all coming at this thing from very different angles, because the show itself makes changes to the original formula, X-Men 97 meaning, while also continuing that legacy. I think in an interesting attempt to not only grab, this is obviously, like I said earlier, nostalgia porn for the people that were fans of the original show, but I think they're making choices to reach even a wider audience, people that maybe are now into superheroes that weren't before, through the kinds of stories that the X-Men are suited for telling. And so actually with that in mind, so what did you want from an X-Men 97 show?
I don't think I actually had any real expectations for it. Only because the first, at least for me, the first animated rendition was so good that if I had set my expectations too high, I knew I was going to be disappointed in doing it.
Sure.
So I just wanted to have an entertaining show, and that's what I got. It was from the first moment, that first scene where you're introduced to the X-Men, it's just pure entertainment. And like you said, everything about this is pure nostalgia. They're just there to get every buck of nostalgia love they could, and I'm down for it. But what I was hoping for is something that, if I had to pin something down, I'm just hoping for more growth in the characters more than anything. We're now talking about a storyline that's been going on for 5-6 years. I want to see them change a little bit, just like they did in the comics. Maybe introduce new storylines. And I know that can be a little bit hard because they are sort of stuck in a time frame.
Sure.
Everything's supposed to be in the 90s, which hopefully we can talk about that too, because there was a couple things I thought was a little odd that were choices. But I think more than anything, I wanted to have a way for them to introduce the X-Men to a new era for people, which
Right.
I'm assuming outside of nostalgia, this is also just a gateway for them to introduce the X-Men movie.
Right.
I'm thinking this is just a prep work. They're saying, hey, what is the reaction going to be to this? Okay, let's give them the full-fledged X-Men movie, part of the MCU, and see how it does. I mean, that's what I'm thinking it's going.
Well, that's an interesting tangent there that I don't mind going down real quick. Like, I actually kind of not worry, but like, if this is super popular, does that affect the type of movie they make at all? Maybe they just like, maybe we should just keep the X-Men in its own little 90s universe, and maybe they don't make a live action movie. They make an animated movie. I mean, it is Disney ultimately. And that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. If this is super successful, like, what does that mean for a movie what does that mean for an MCU X-Men movie, if anything at all? I wonder.
Well, I don't think they would disregard making a live action just because you already have 2 successful Deadpool movies, and now they're coming out with a third one, which from all indications, they're introducing some portion of mutant mayhem in there. You also have Beast, spoilers, Beast showing up in the Marvels movie just recently. So, and then of
looking
course,
exactly like the animated 97, by the way.
Yeah. And also still voiced by Kelsey Grammer, if I'm not mistaken.
In the movie, not in the show,
Yeah, but he also did the voice of Beast in the X3 movie.
Yeah,
he was the Beast.
Yeah, he was the Beast.
And then we also have, Patrick Stewart showing up as Charles Xavier in the second Doctor Strange movie. So the idea of them disregarding a live action, I think, is nothing that I don't think that's something they will do. But I do think that they're going to use this as maybe a map of saying, how do we want the X-Men to show up in the MCU? Because I think that's the ultimate goal: is where do they show up? How do they interact with the Avengers and everybody else that's already been established? And how do we make as much money off of this as possible? Because we know it's going to be big.
Yeah. When it comes to expectations, my expectations, they weren't low. I was mostly, when I first heard that the show was announced, I was a little, a little like, they're just doing that nostalgia play. That's weird. And I wasn't necessarily on board with it. But then as we started seeing like trailers and art come out for it, the old X-Men fan in me just started getting all excited. And I think what I wanted was, I kind of wanted it to be what I wanted it to be back in 92. I wanted to have it be a show that really kind of captured what I saw in my head while reading those comics. But being fun, but also having those moments of self-reflection and interesting conversations about acceptance and tolerance and difference and all the stuff that the X-Men represent. So let's get to the actual meat of it here. We got 3 episodes out as of the time of this recording. The first one's called To Me, My X-Men. The next one's called Mutant Liberation Begins. Well, To Me, My X-Men is like, hey, here's the X-Men. Mutant Liberation Begins is basically the one about Magneto. And Fire Made Flesh for those that know the comics, it's basically in very abbreviated form, Inferno.
Extremely abbreviated, unfortunately.
Extremely. Andrew, having not really any experience with animated X-Men, we asked you to watch at least the first episode. I said maybe the second, but did you get through all 3?
Yeah, I watched all 3. Yeah.
And as a person with no experience necessarily with the X-Men, aside from seeing some movies and stuff over time, especially being a continuation of the series, how do you feel they handled onboarding you? What did you kind of take away from it?
So so what I would say is, like, starting I watched 1 or 2 episodes of the original. Starting this, it really feels like I will say, and maybe it's just my hot take, I'm not too worried because I kind of know comic booky stuff, but it does feel like, hey, I started watching Supernatural at season 8, and you're like, oh, you missed seasons 1 through 7. They're kind of important, but also they're kind of not. Yeah. Right. That's the thing. Right. Like, it feels like I definitely missed stuff, and gosh, I'm like, man, what are they talking about? Right. But then at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Right. Like, so that's the feeling I had is like, there clearly is something I'm missing, but it doesn't seem to matter that much. And enough of it are, like, these characters, I know who a lot of the characters are. I don't know who all the characters are, but that's okay. I'm figuring it out. And more importantly, the thing I know I want to talk about, they change the opening credits every episode, so I know who the important characters are. Yeah. Sorry, this is a thing that in a chat with our DC correspondent Taylor, Dan discovered that if anything, Andrew and me has a fetish or some sort of obsession with shows that change their opening credits.
Yeah.
Because it is, having seen a few episodes, like the original one just listed the same 6 characters or whatever, right? And here it was like, I think the first episode listed the original. No, they already added some new people, but you're like, okay, it's a new show, that's fine. The second episode suddenly and they hit you hard with it first because they give you the new character, spoiler, Magneto, in the first. He's the first one you see, and you're like, what? You know. I like that kind of stuff, and that's what. For me, that is like, okay, that's what I need to know for the episode. Show me the second and a half power display for the character in the opening credits.
Yeah, they also changed some of the little action vignettes.
Yes,
that play in there. Yeah,
but they're still playing the classic theme song as written by Chaim Saban and Shuki Levy. Who you may know from their other work around the same time, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Go Power Rangers.
Although I don't think they wrote that song. They just produced the show.
Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, they already had their hit. They were done.
When Power Rangers debuted, it was right after X-Men.
Mm-hmm. So,
whoa.
It's all connected, man.
It's all connected. X-Men walked so Power Rangers could run.
Yeah. So, in these first 3 episodes... Andrew, as a relative newcomer, and aside from the opening credits, is there anything particularly that stood out to you? Anything that kind of surprised you in terms of what it did or didn't do, and whatever expectations you might have had?
Again, not having seen the original series, I don't know if the original series ended with Professor Xavier dying. That was it's called the X-Men, and Professor X is not in the picture, so I'm to the point where are you going to change the name to the M-Men? You know, like the Magneto Men? I don't know.
How dare you?
So that was kind of a shocker because to me, Professor X was the relationship between Professor X and Xavier, and I guess we still see that, right? Or and Professor Magneto, X and Xavier, Professor X and Magneto. We still technically see that relationship because we're seeing how does Magneto, ostensibly do this thing that, if you believe the pitch that he's been tasked by Xavier to do.
I like how Xavier guilt tripped him into becoming a good guy, apparently.
Assuming there's no scam that's going to be revealed in episode 6, right?
Right. For what it's worth, I should have forwarded on to you. I did see a tweet that I screen captured that's like, here's all the basics that you need to know from the original series. And it was revealed in the original series. And this is in one of the opening clips, I think it was episode 3. Professor X gets ostensibly shot, but it was revealed in that same episode that the Shi'ar, an alien race, Andrew, of the princess of whom Professor X had a relationship with, kind of also saved him and took him into space. So,
spoilers.
Oh, I assumed he was not actually dead.
Yeah,
right.
Spoilers. Like I said, it was in that episode. So,
well, spoilers in the comics. I think he's been shot multiple times.
Oh yeah,
and I think he's been dead a couple times.
That dude's been shot more than 50 Cent.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just kind of learning where characters are at was kind of the biggest surprise for you. Like, okay, you're kind of putting the pieces together here.
Yeah.
What about you, Kyrun? What kind of stood out to you? And you can take this any way you want: story, character, meta stuff. I don't care. What stood out the most to you?
The first thing when I was watching episode 1 was that introduction of Cyclops, and it was a cool scene. But
hell yeah!
Okay, wait.
I call this.
Wait, I'm not gonna go. Okay, I'm gonna talk about the coolness. But the first thing that when you get introduced to him, if you actually watch that episode and then go back and watch episode 1 of the original series, both when you first get introduced to Cyclops, it's the exact same scene. In the 97 one, you have Cyclops saving Sunspot. And then he initially says, "Oh my God, what's your name?" He goes, "Cyclops, get down." If you go back to this episode 1 of season 1, Cyclops is saving Jubilee, and she says, "Oh my God, who are you?" As she faints, and he goes, "Cyclops, get down." And I'm like, was that planned?
Sure, absolutely.
That had to be planned. Yeah.
He also does the same joke where he's like, "Oh God, you took off my visor. I surrender." Not. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah. At that point, I was like, yeah, this is straight nostalgia for me. But that whole first episode at least felt like this was their way of saying Cyclops is the leader, but we're going to make Cyclops as cool of a leader as we can and show off everything he can do. Because there was two other scenes in there where you just saw Cyclops do amazing things that you never really saw him do in the original X-Men X-Men series. I was like,
finally someone understands his powers.
Yeah.
Right. They're not laser beams. They're like force beams.
Yeah.
Concussive
Blasts. Yeah. God, we said that at the same time. We are nerds.
Yeah. It's like you're both playing a Marvel versus Capcom. Concussive blast. Concussive blast.
I wrote down after rewatching the first 3 episodes again, I'm like, I think this series might be called The Redemption of Scott Summers. Because that original series painted him in such a poor light. Like everybody's like, oh, he's the Boy Scout. He's a stick in the mud. I'm like, they want to make that clear right away. Nope. He rocks.
I would agree with that up until episode 3. Specifically the ending of episode 3. And I don't know if we're going to... I'm going to say it anyways. Up until the point where we find out
I guess we should say this. We're assuming if you want to listen to this conversation, you've watched the episode. So we're not going to do like plot recaps and stuff because you've already seen it. So please, spoilers abound.
Yeah. So up until episode 3 at the end where we find out that Mr. Sinister has infected his son and the X-Men decide to send him, Nathaniel, to the future. And Cyclops is like, I'm not going to be a part of this. And my dad and all this other stuff. I'm like, all right, wait a minute now. He's been so cool up until this point, and now all of a sudden they reverted him back to the a-hole that he was portrayed at times in the original series. And I was like, the first 2 episodes, we got cool Cyclops, and now we got back to this, I'm going to do everything by the book Cyclops. I was like, all right, you got to give me something else. Let the man grow a little bit, please.
I didn't get that at all.
Really?
I'm like, he was dealing with like abandonment trauma. That's why he bounced. He was like, I mean, yeah, but he's clear, and it's clearly trauma he hasn't dealt with.
Yeah.
In terms of like therapy, and like, yeah, because it seems really reactive and irrational, but that's trauma, baby. And I don't know. First, what I was wondering was like, okay, have they not really? Sorry, Andrew. Have they not? Did they not really deal with the Starjammers in the original cartoon at all? Because for Andrew, if you don't know, his dad went off and became a space pirate.
There was a couple episodes where they had the Starjammers.
Yeah, I wonder if they didn't really address that aspect. But
I was just wondering, are we all supposed to know that the kid is Cable? That's all I could think of.
Nope, not at that moment.
I had a Martha moment. Well, I'm like, especially Cable, Nathan Summers was born to Madeline Pryor. The order of events in the comics are a little different, but they named him Nathan. And Madeline Pryor was a result of Mr. Sinister doing bullshit. Mr. Sinister's real name is Nathaniel Essex. I'm like, oh, fuck. They named him after... Did they name him after, like, the fucking monster that created this whole mess? That's fucked up. And just shows Mr. Sinister being as sinister as possible. I don't know. I just kind of like, oh, that Nathan and Nathaniel, that's weird.
Well, didn't they say in the cartoon it was like her dad's name or something like that?
That's what I remember that, like something like that, saying it was named after someone's dad. I thought,
yeah.
Which then he makes it even weirder that, like, yes, is it actually named after Mr. Sinister?
Well, wait, yeah. If it's fake Jean or Madeline who says this after her dad is ostensibly Mr. Sinister.
Yeah.
Dang.
Who'd have guessed? But yeah, it was just, for me, that's that thing where, like, because I know just the tiniest bit about the X-Men, I'm like, and also I know that Cable has been in the X-Men. Like, he was in the original series. So, like, I'm sitting here wondering, like, is this the part where imagine this is season 6 of the show. Mm-hmm. Is this where the fans are like, wait a second, isn't that the dude that looked kind of like, Cyclops, but was from the future and had a weird arm and shit? Like.
I don't know if they ever, in the original series, they ever addressed the fact that Cable is the son of Scott and Madeline.
I don't think they did, but I think they hinted at it a couple times.
Sure. I mean, because the one thing that they are kind of keeping going from the comics is that they are really kind of writing this in its own way as a soap opera. Lots of threads are being dangled, and not all of them are being addressed, with possibly the idea of like, oh, we can address that in the future, right? If we need a storyline. The thing I'll say that stood out to me is that it's kind of an overall kind of idea. I feel like I got what I wanted. I watched that first episode, and I'm like, if they never release anything else, this first episode is the best piece of animated X-Men I've ever seen. The balance between just reflective, thoughtful conversation, like the kitchen after the opening scene where they're just kind of talking about, oh shit, professor's gone, and like Morph is making fun of Cyclops, and Gambit's being a prick.
Gambit was in a crop top.
Hell yeah, it's the 90s, my friend. If you're not in a crop top, what are you doing?
I'm wearing a crop top still. I don't know what y'all talking about.
Sorry, I love the crop top because apparently there are some people complaining that Disney's wokeifying the X-Men. They put Gambit in a crop top, and there's like so many levels of, are you serious? And I love the one where people are like, I don't know, man. Carl Weathers wore a crop top in Rocky 3, right? like I'm pretty certain that crop tops were just the thing you did in the 80s and 90s,
right?
Those are also the same people that were complaining that they took away Rogue's butt because of that one image that we all remember.
That one shot.
That one
where the
shot.
animator got horny. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I like is the voice actor for Gambit was recently at a convention and doing a panel, and he wore the crop top. And good on him. And I want to get back to sort of the complaints that some people are levying about the wokeness of the X-Men, which is a dumb conversation to have.
Yeah, that makes no sense. Combining woke with X-Men just makes no sense.
Like, do you know what you're reading there, guys?
I mean, that's a weird. Back in 1963, that was the original proposed title of the comic, The Woke Men.
Yeah.
Yeah, the editor's like, can we just make that an X?
I'm sorry, I believed you. I was like, really?
Wow. Stan Lee was pretty progressive. No, he actually wanted to call this is true. He wanted to call it The Mutants. And they said, that sounds scary. Can we call it something more superhero-y? He's like, I don't know, the fucking X-Men. Like, sure, okay. And then what did it do? It became a comic that features a majority of women characters. Well done.
Can we also stop giving Stan Lee credit for the X-Men? I'm sorry. That's a hot take, but he only wrote the series for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then it got canceled. And then they rebooted it into what we know as the X-Men. So most of the stuff that we know and love from the X-Men is really from like Chris Claremont.
Oh, yeah, 75 on. Yeah.
Yeah.
It ran for about 3 or 4 years because Roy Thomas took over writing.
Yep.
Jack Kirby was on it for just as long as Stan Lee was. It wasn't doing well from the get-go. They moved on. Right before it got canceled, they brought in this young artist named Neil Adams.
Unknown guy.
To do... who kind of was doing crazy shit. But anyway, then it got canceled. It didn't get canceled. They kept releasing numbered issues, but they were just reprints until Giant Size X-Men 1 in 1975, 4, 5, somewhere like that.
When it got woke.
Yeah. I liked kind of how thoughtful the show was right from the get-go, but also how they were clearly having fun. That opening fight scene, like you said, Kyrun, is super cool. We're seeing these characters use and I think this is true throughout the first 3 episodes. One of the things that the creators of the show have a handle on is how to use these powers in creative and interesting ways. Having Cyclops uses optic blast as a mobility tactic is awesome. Magneto in episode 2, when the government shows up to arrest him, he threatens them by picking up all the helicopters and basically aiming their spinning blades at the folks. And like, that's cool as hell. And then the fight between the Goblin Queen and Magneto in episode 3 is just like, who knew I wanted to see telekinesis versus magnetism? Sure. Just a lot of really cool stuff. And what I really like about it is something that I usually bounce off of when it comes to American animation, but they take a lot of cues from anime in terms of how they animate scenes. And
yeah, I was noticing that
when they go hard, like it's one of the most gorgeously animated modern animated shows out there right now, especially in terms of American animation. I'm really impressed with the animation in this series.
I was just saying, I was noticing that in a lot of, especially the fight scenes, you could tell that they're taking cues from anime. Even in general scenes of them talking, there's a lot of extreme close-ups that you see in anime that I don't remember seeing in the original series.
Right.
I just felt like maybe it's just the artists, of course, are different from back then, but it's just the growth of the genre, the growth of the ability of the artist. But I was like, wow, it felt like an anime at times, of just how the storytelling was going. And like, I will say the Goblin Queen Magneto fight was great, but the Magneto fight when he was on trial for me was even better because you really got to see Magneto play with metal. Yeah, you got to see him just do so many different things, making the cage with the pieces of furniture and stuff that was in the room. I was like, that's Magneto. He does the shields, but it's the idea of he's playing with magnet in metal as he's using his power. He never really used his powers to his full extent. If you actually watch him, he's just playing. Because he knows he could kill everybody in an instant, but he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna play with you guys, put you in a cage, I'm gonna throw some things at you, I'm just gonna play around with you until I get bored, and then I'm gonna really unleash what I need to. And that was really cool. And then you got the idea of Storm just combining the two, which gave a nod to me of like the old X-Men versus Marvel, or X-Men versus Capcom video games. You get to do a double team fight. I was like, oh, this is fantastic, dude.
Yeah, like I said, like they have a really good economy of animation here. During the quiet times, they really rely on limited animation, which is something anime does. But yeah, for those action scenes, they are doing some very beautifully complicated stuff that is not just animated well, but like the choreography of it. Like I think what you're speaking to is something that I was really impressed to see, was they do a really good job animating teamwork. Like in episode 3, when they're fighting the demons because pit to hell opened up in the school or in the mansion,
like it does,
as it does, right? I mean, if Buffy taught me anything,
hell mounts.
And Beast is riding this demon, and then the demon throws him off. Yeah. Oh, that might have been the Triple X-Men. He's riding this flying demon, and then he falls off, and he's like, "Uh-oh, I'm dying." And like we cut to Bishop and Wolverine, who are just cutting shit up, and then Bishop hears that Beast is in trouble. He just grabs Logan and throws him across the pit. It's good stuff. And in the first episode where like Gambit charges up Wolverine's claws and all that stuff, it's really, like I said, back to creative use of powers and creative use, illustration or animation, I guess, of teamwork that I haven't really seen since I think maybe that first Avengers movie that really shows these characters interacting and not just independently using powers, but using their powers collaboratively to, like, going back to Iron Man shooting his beam off of Captain America's shield and shit like that. Really cool, interesting stuff.
Well, even the animation, like we were mentioning, they stepped it up. If you look at Jubilee, Jubilee actually looks like an Asian person in this series,
and voiced by one now too, which is great.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look back at the first original series, she looked more like a whitewashed Asian, young white.
I mean, someone who just watched the first episode, I don't think I intuited that she was supposed to be of Asian descent.
Yeah, it's like the animators missed one crucial detail.
Like Jubilation Lee did not come. I get Lee, right? No, I did not get that.
It really had to be force fed. Like, I'm Chinese. Oh, you are. Oh, okay.
They must have been like, it's like a clever nod to Stanley, right?
I mean, that's what I probably thought, right?
But no, there was a lot of upgrade in the artwork, and I also liked, and Dan, you probably appreciate this also, is that there were a lot of little Easter eggs thrown in throughout the show that if you had to be a fan of the comics to read. Like, there was a small image of what we found out was Madeline Pryor, or we don't know actually if it was Madeline Pryor or Jean Grey getting married. It was just a photo of their marriage, and that was a callback to the X-Men 30 wedding between Jean Grey and Cyclops. And you saw that same image. You saw the group photo that Jim Lee drew. There was an image in the Goblin Queen section where we saw the Art Adams famous X-Men shot.
The classic X-Men #1 cover,
Yeah, I mean, there was just
lots of good stuff,
There were so many good things I think they did. And there were only a minor couple things I felt like they really missed on. Like
what?
And going back to Jubilee, when we first got introduced to Roberto and he was waking up, she was talking about Bishop. And she says something, what was it? I have it written down. Bishop's bling. He's a time traveler.
Yeah.
And this way I feel like we got writers that just maybe forgot the era, because I can't remember anybody in the 90s saying bling.
The anachronism. Okay,
yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Also, the hairstyle for Bishop seems very modern. Like, I don't remember anybody really wearing that type of hairstyle in the 90s.
Well, but he's from the future, man.
He is. And but
he has tens of years of hair. Right.
But when we last saw him in the original series, he still had his mullet. So something happened where they decided we're going to cut off his mullet and make it more of a modern take. So there was like minor things like that. You can just gloss over them really quick. But overall, this was just a really good rendition and continuation, honestly.
Look for Kyrun's Twitter campaign, #SaveTheMullet.
Me and Wells Portaccio.
Yeah, right. So I do want to kind of talk about the woke issue. And I was, because it's, yeah, okay, we all know, like, the X-Men, especially since 1975, as you pointed out, Kyrun, that's when they started bringing in sort of like the social justice aspect of mutanthood into the comics. Not something fully addressed in the original series, although I haven't read all the original 60s comics because I heard they're bad.
Yeah, they're bad.
There is that, I think there's the endemic, like I said, approach to social justice and minorities and outcasts that the X-Men is inherently about. And I think if you were to have a more like coherent conversation with someone that is worried about this, they would say, like, well, are they putting this forward at the sacrifice of telling a good story or telling a good superhero story? And so as I was watching through it again, I'm like, okay, is there anything that could give people that are worried about that ammunition? And I think, just to get this conversation started, I think the most they ever kind of did that was in episode 2 with the trial with Magneto's monologue at the end. But like, it was in character. Like I never felt like there was any agenda being presented aside from the basic shit that Magneto has always been about, and doing it in a super cool way, suspending people that are being jerks above the planet. Andrew, although you probably weren't watching with this in mind, but if we put this lens over your viewing experience, was there anything particularly about the X-Men agenda and how it was presented in these first 3 episodes that stood out the most to you?
Well, the one thing that, because I actually had lunch with some friends before I watched the episodes, like earlier in the weekend, and someone had actually made a comment about parallels to a January 6th riot. Right?
Yeah, I was really surprised at that.
That's one that granted, people storming a government building isn't new. We didn't invent that in 2021. But it's something that still kind of people think about, people are still talking about. So for this to address that, like that, but that didn't feel like that was just, it fit in the context, right? You have people that hate mutants, and
if anything, yeah, just the cultural memory of that actually happening just gave that scene more weight. More than maybe it was. I mean, I'm sure that they went into production around or after that happened. Like, so at least they had more real world stuff to pull from. It was an interesting sort of, I don't want to say emotional reaction. It didn't like make me gasp, but it's just like, oh shit. Right? What about for you, Kyrun?
The reintroduction of Friends of Humanity, I'm pretty sure it made some people, look at themselves in the mirror and be like, well, hey, is that me? Is that me they're portraying as this psychotic person trying to kill off people that are different from them? I'm pretty sure there are people out there that maybe went over their head that don't even see that is them, and that's how they're acting online or in public. One thing I felt like was portrayed pretty well also, though, was the birth scene. When they're at the hospital, Jean Grey is about to give birth, and the doctor's like, "I'm not going to touch you, muties. You guys can't control yourselves." And then, Rogue steps in, steals his abilities. But is that idea of that was still something, particularly for people of color back in the 60s and 70s, they still had to deal with things like that. And the idea that, we're now connecting these two things for mutants are really, really good to think about. One thing I did notice that they
actually, can I add on to that?
Yeah.
And it's still relevant though, because outside of the context of giving birth, right?
Yeah.
We also have I won't sanctify your wedding because you're, more commonly you hear about it same sex, but hold on, I'm waiting for, for some states to put interracial marriage back on that. The idea that a doctor or a clerk or a person could refuse to do something, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's still timely and it's still relatable.
God, that sucks that it's still relatable.
And also, is that a thing? Rogue can just steal your skill set? I thought it was just powers.
Yeah, she steals I get powers can be knowledge, and knowledge is power.
Well, she can steal memories, but I think they take a little bit of liberty in her ability to do that, because it's supposed to be sort of uncontrollable for her what she can take. So the idea that she could just take all this doctor's capabilities just seems a little bit of a stretch, but
does he get them back?
Maybe we and the doctor learned that he's actually a mutant, and his mutant power is being a doctor.
His obstetrician skills all come from his mutant power.
Hey, the Forge, the character we met at end of episode 3, his mutant power is to build things. So who knows?
No, I cannot wait for Forge, just because Forge for me is a low key great character, and honestly an underutilized character in the comics. Even
very much so.
I mean, they got the idea of a guy that can create anything he really wants is going to be fun to play with, and then we also have. Hopefully, they touch upon the relationship between Forge and Storm, because they will. They will.
The next episode is partially titled Life Death, which is
in the comics though they had a pretty heavy romantic relationship in the comics.
Yes, the Life Death stories, and then of course the stuff in Uncanny and like 281 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Life Death is like in the comics, Storm does lose her powers, and in the comics, for those that don't know, like she is zapped by a power canceling gun, and what we learn is that Forge made that gun, and then he basically takes it upon it to like, I'm gonna fix this, but she doesn't know that like, oh, he made the thing that actually did this in the first place, and they fall in love in what could be kind of a Stockholm Syndrome kind of situation, but we're not gonna worry about that. There's 2 really well-known single issue stories called Life Death and Life Death Part 2, I think, that were by Chris Claremont and drawn beautifully by Barry Windsor Smith. And it's clear they're leaning into those issues, but they're just gorgeous to look at the very least. So yeah, they're going to be touching it on that. It seems like I don't know about the romantic side of it, but who knows? They're going to be touching on those stories because there's the 2 upcoming episodes. The next one, which is the first, the title is divided in half. One's called Motendo, and then the / Life Death, and then later there's another episode that is. I'm guessing they're dividing this episode up into 2, an A story and a B story. There's Life Death 2 as well. So we'll see where it goes, but I'm pretty excited because that's a really subtle, quiet story in the comics. And to actually go there in a TV show with limited episodes is really bold. And I'm excited to see what they do. And to see Forge, who, again, finally is voiced by a Native American actor, being a Native American character, is cool to see as well.
Agreed.
There we go.
Sorry, I didn't know where you were going with that. No, I mean, it's great that they are introducing the correct nationalities, correct people. I am sorry to hear that. I think it was like 2 or 3 of the original voice actors passed away, and that's why they had to replace some of them. But it doesn't feel like we missed a beat or they skipped a beat when you're getting those voice actors. They sound almost exactly like the originals were. And I think it was like 4 or 5 original actors came back. So it just feels like a great mix of the old and new. It feels like the series is still fresh, but hopefully it can be something they can continue. And I mean, Andrew, as someone that is new to this genre, new to the series, is it something maybe you'd be interested in watching in the future? Because that's for me is the biggest thing, is bringing in more people to want to watch something like that. Yeah,
I'll keep watching it. I mean, the one thing I'll say is one of the struggles I have with the original series is the animation is I don't think it's that great. I'm not an expert on these things, but it reminded me of, this is the story I love to tell. When I worked in the movie theater, we had, The Prince of Egypt playing, and before the movie started, there was a trailer for Disney's Tarzan and a trailer for an animated version of The King and I.
Oh God,
which
that was so bad.
It was like we have 2 pretty well expertly done animated works bookending what looked like garbage from the 70s. And it felt, it's not quite that bad, but the X-Men original series, but that's why, like, for me, I have trouble watching the original because it's like, this doesn't look very good. Where this new one actually, like, I like the animation, I like what they're doing so far. I know enough about the characters. I can be like, again, I was like, ooh, that's Cable. Like, I know enough about bullshit X-Men stuff to know that kid was Cable, even if they didn't say that kid is Cable, right? Even so yeah.
I did find it weird that as soon as the kid came out of the operating room, or not the operating, but the delivery room, he was holding a huge gun.
And one of his arms was replaced with like a robot.
Heck yeah.
And his eye was lighting up too.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, what happened to that child? What's that techno whatever virus,
And he was saying extreme a lot. I don't know what that all about.
It's extreme.
I never saw his feet.
I did see his feet. He did look a little funky, like he had a lot of pockets.
That is so wow.
So one thing I will say, we talked about voice actors. So I was reading Alison Court, who had voiced Jubilee originally.
Right.
She actually said she wouldn't revoice the character. She wanted to go to an Asian American actress. But apparently there's a note here on Wikipedia, which is always 100% accurate, that suggests she'll actually be voicing a variant of Jubilee named Absissa.
Sure.
So either way, it's kind of an interesting thing that we're going to let this other person do it. You know, the actress wants this other person to do it, but then also, hey, we'll have this other character that's related to, so it's a fun way to say we have new voices, we have some old voices, some sideways voices. I don't know what that means.
I was impressed with that the returning actors that returned to their characters didn't sound as geriatric as I feared they would. I was never really a fan of the guy that did the original voice of Wolverine. I have all the hot bad takes today. I apologize.
Cal Dodd? You don't like Cal Dodd?
Yeah, I did not like his voice. I felt too forced. It was like, oh, look at me, I'm gritty. But I think part of it is just he's getting a chance to just act more, be more of a person rather than just I'm the Wolverine. And like his performance in this show is fantastic. It's an interesting thing. Like as I was watching this, I think the answer is obvious. But like the question I had is like, okay, who is this for? Because we can't deny that, okay, the 92 series is for kids.
Yeah.
It is for children, right? Probably preteens at the earliest, teenagers at the oldest. This is not for kids, I would say. I don't think it's probably bad to show kids, but there is like low level cursing. We hear, Logan say like, "Why are you pissing in my ear about it?" and stuff like that, right? And it was kind of surprising. And some of but in episode 3, when the weird psychedelic stuff starts happening with like the demons and whatnot, stuff gets pretty creepy, beautifully creepy. It's really well. Well, I'm still just blown away by how well animated the show is. Like the answer to that question is it's for the people that are now in their 30s and 40s that love that original show. That's who it's for. But yeah, the one thing I'm interested in as well, Karen, you kind of brought this up with Andrew, which is I hope, and I think it's written well enough that it brings on new fans. Like Andrew said, I don't feel like it's dependent on having seen the original 5 seasons of show. That it gives you the information you need. And the important thing is that they do a good job just introducing you to the characters so that you get a sense of who these people are, what their relationships are. And as long as you generally know maybe what the X-Men are about, you should be good to go. And I hope that's enough to bring in some fans. I know it's been doing well in terms of streams, but we haven't heard anything about a season 2 renewal.
I thought it was already renewed for season 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. Well, that's great.
I'll have to go back and double check. I thought it was already renewed for season 2 and 3.
I read that they had started writing for season 2, but I hadn't seen that or heard that they actually got renewed. But why would you write if you hadn't been renewed?
Yeah.
I know there's a little bit of drama around the original, like the developer of the show, Bo DeMaio.
Yeah.
He got let go because it sounds like people are saying he got let go because Disney found out he had a non-explicit OnlyFans account.
He was trying to make extra cash on the side. I mean,
hey man, don't hate the player, hate the game.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. He had OnlyFans. Disney found out, and they said
a non-explicit OnlyFans account. Let's make that clear. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, non-explicit OnlyFans, and they had to let him go. Or no, wait, actually, he decided to leave, right?
Yeah. The statements that have been coming out has been that it's mutual, but he was let go like days before the show premiered.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, my time is done, I'm ready to move on. Like he had already written episodes for season 2 and planned out season 3. And it's too bad. I mean, hopefully the show works just as hope we set up a well-oiled machine, so to speak. Speaking of OnlyFans. He's a really good writer. He's written on a lot of interesting things. He's written for Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
Yes, no, I was going to say he wrote 2 episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and apparently while on his OnlyFans, I don't know.
Sure.
Andrew is looking up the OnlyFans right now. Don't bother him.
No, I'm not looking up the OnlyFans.
So it's a good showing. As an X-Men fan, it got me excited for Marvel Studios led X-Men stuff, which I'm not saying I wasn't excited for it, but it'll be interesting to see how it does and where they take the X-Men from here, especially if this is popular, kind of what Deadpool 3 adds on to all that. I don't know. It's the X-Men are a very interesting position here as the MCU keeps going forward, and it'll be interesting to see what influences what. But thank you, Kyrun, for coming on the show to talk about this. We'll definitely do a season 1 recap episode later on down the line.
Awesome. I can't wait for that.
So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page of this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find me on Instagram at Bethel Comics, and you can find Andrew on Mastodon at profounddark@dice.camp. Kyrun, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at tauruscomics.com. I am also on all social media platforms at Taurus Comics.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. You may already be listening to the show there because we simulcast in YouTube. If you do listen to the show on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe, ring that bell, and stuff.
Kyrun listens to us on YouTube. Have you liked and subscribed, and have you rung the bell?
I like and subscribe. Yes, I rang the bell.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusae, the other is called District 4. They're both written and performed by Kevin McLeod of the Clan McLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music and more in compotech.filmmusic.io. That's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 Attribution License.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using the proprietary metric, help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. I can't believe it. I feel like I've waited for years. I finally got an episode all about the X-Men. Is it my birthday?
No.
No, it's not. That's in September, dude.
Oh, yeah.
I know you forget.
You're old.
So are you, buddy. You're older than... Both of you suckers are older than me.
Damn it.
I'm like 2 weeks.
Go to hell, both of you.
2 weeks.
Damn it. I'm older than Andrew also? Oh,
Yeah,
damn it.
yeah. We just brought you on, Grandpa, because we're worried about you.
Oh, I need to go change my diaper.
Well, that's all. I'll tell you, I didn't actually know how old you were. I always assumed you were like 10 years younger than us.
No,
Yeah, no, it's just Taylor.
You just look it. You look
Yeah,
good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's called...
Whereas Dan looks like time came early.
wow.
It just kept kicking the door.
There are so many double entendres in this episode.
What keeps you so young, Kyrun?
I was going to say something, but it's very inappropriate. So I'm just going to say comic books.
Wow.
Comic books keep me young.
One thing we know is that this show is known for censoring itself quite a bit. Anyway, I want to thank you again, Kyrun, for being on the show. It feels like it's my birthday because you're such a gift.
Wow. Why are you buttering me up so much? I mean,
Because I have bad news. No. I'm actually going to cut you from this episode. Sorry.
It's just going to be Dan talking to himself.
It's running long. Yeah.
it'd be a weird episode. It's just a bunch of empty sound, no sound as parts. That would be a weird episode, man.
That's how you could describe our show most times.
Yeah,
So until you have an awesome friend like Kyrun, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And I'm Kyrun Silva.
And for all intents and purposes,
That was a podcast. That's from an ethnic restaurant called Taco Bell.
make a run for the toilet. Speaking of, that's where crap goes, Kyrun.
At Taco Bell?
Remember when I tried to order double-decker tacos from Burger King?
Yes, I do. It's so weird to say that, but like legitimately, yes, I was there for that.
I saw a bag of Lay's potato chips at the store yesterday.
Okay.
And I guess they're doing some type of cross promotion with IHOP. Because it was the Rudy Trudy Fresh and Fruity flavor Lay's potato chips.
That sounds like a choice.
OnlyFans is not a porny OnlyFans.
Yes.
It's just
So
some talking.
our OnlyFans expert has told us that it is, as Dan said, not explicit.
Yes, Disney does as Disney does.
So there we go.
Mysterious.
Commentary from our
Resident guy who knows about gay people.
On the ground OnlyFans expert.
on the ground OnlyFans expert.
Whoa, that
sounds
sounds
different when you
wow.
say it that way.
That doesn't sound good together at all.
Oh, I'm crying.
OnlyFans expert.
All right. And now back to Kyrun with sports.
Yes.
But what do they give us? Fruity Tooty Fresh and Fruity Chips. Like, that doesn't even mean anything.
And we'll do a painful four-way with Taylor.
Jesus Christ, Andrew.
God, this conversation is just getting really
I'm
bad.
sorry. That was not intentional. I meant a four-way conversation.
This is how much I like you guys. I'm missing a Kings game to watch this with you. So,
Like the
Oh, I
beard.
didn't realize you were into royalty.
yeah.
I didn't know you liked hockey. Oh, and LA teams. That's weird.
And I'm out. All right. See you guys later.
Good talk, everyone. And that was a podcast.
We need more Glenn.